May peace be upon us. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the second International Conference of Accounting and Business with the theme Digital Transformation and Development of the Concepts of Sustainability Accounting in the latest research model. We are honored to have you here with us today. Before we proceed, let me first explain about our event, which is divided into 2 days. Each day will have attendance registration, and there will be a certificate. Each word, 30,000 rupiah. Therefore, for participants who need a certificate, please follow the rules properly. I'm Fatia Azara, will be your master ceremony for today's event. First of all, I would like to greet the chairman of Indonesian Young Accountant Association, Mr. Raffles Ginting SEMAK, dear chairperson of the third anniversary commit of Ikatan Cendekiawan Muda Akuntansi, Mrs. Ayu Puspitasari SAK MAK, dear chairperson of Ikatan Cendekiawan Muda Akuntansi Conference Commit, Mrs. Risa Anindita SEMAK AKCA, respected speaker, Dr. Osman Jello, BSc ACCMA, University of Gambia, respected speaker, Dr. Nampuna Dolok Bultom, Sunway Center for ESG, Sunway Business School, Malaysia, and all estimated guests from whom I respect. Ladies and gentlemen, first and foremost, let us express our gratitude to God Almighty for His abundant mercy and guidance that has brought us all today together. It is with His blessing that we are able to convene here for the second International Conference of Accounting and Business with the theme Digital Transformation and Development of Concept of Sustainability Accounting in the latest research model. And now, to kick off today's program, allow me to present the agenda for our event. One, opening. Two, first speaker speech. Three, Q&A season. Four, photo session and symbolic appreciation. Five, second speaker speech. Six, Q&A season. Seven, photo season and symbolic appreciation. Eight, parallel session. Nine, closing. To begin our event, let us start with a moment of reflection and unity. Before we begin our seminar today, let us take a moment to pray. I will lead the prayer in Islamic tradition, and for those who follow different faith, please feel free to pray in your own way. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Let's read Surah Al-Fatihah individually. Thank you. Now, please stand for the national anthem of Indonesia. Please, to the Zoom operator, play the Indonesian national anthem, Indonesia Raya. Now, moving to the first keynote speech of the day, I'm pleased to introduce our chairman of Ikatan Cendekiawan Muda Akuntansi, Mr. Raffles Ginting SEMAK, because he was unable to attend it. He will be represented by the head of committee, Mrs. Ayu Puspitasari SAK MAK. Please join me in welcoming Mrs. Ayu Puspitasari SAK MAK.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Fatia, for the opportunity. So, good morning, distinguished guests, respected speakers, fellow colleagues, and all participants. It is an honor and a privilege to welcome you to today's seminar on digital transformation and development of the concept of sustainability accounting in the latest research model. As the chairwoman of this event, I'm truly delighted to see such an inspiring gathering of professionals, academics, and researchers who are passionate about shaping the future of accounting. The rapid advancement of digital technologies has revolutionized every aspect of our professionals' life, and accounting is no exception. Digital transformation has brought about profound changes in how we gather, analyze, and report data, creating opportunities to enhance efficiency, transparency, and accountability. In tandem with this, the concept of sustainability accounting has gained significant traction, emphasizing the need to integrate environmental, social, and governance factors into our financial decision making. Our discussions today will center around these two crucial developments, digital transformation and sustainability, intersect and how they can be effectively modeled in the latest research. By exploring new research models, we aim to better understand how technology can enable sustainability and how accounting can play a pivotal role in creating a more inclusive, sustainable future for our society. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to our keynote speakers today and panelists for sharing their invaluable insights with us. I also want to extend my appreciation to the organizing committee and the sponsors who have worked tirelessly to make this event possible. Let us all make the most of this opportunity to exchange ideas, foster collaboration, and push the boundaries of what accounting can achieve in this digital era. I encourage you all to actively participate in the discussions and take away knowledge that can be applied in your own professional and academic pursuits. I think that's all I can share today. Thank you once again for joining us, and I wish you all a productive and insightful seminar. Okay, I pass this occasion back to Ms. Fatia.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Ayu Puspitasari, for the warm welcome and insightful words. Now, moving on the first keynote speech of the day, I'm pleased to introduce our distinguished speaker, Dr. Usman Jello, BSc ACCNA, from the University of Gambia. He will be speaking on global sustainability accounting research issues. Before we begin to the seminar event, I will first read the moderator's CVs. Mrs. Ayu Puspitasari, SAKMAK, is an accounting lecturer at Universitas Tanjung Pura, specializing in auditing and financial report. She's previously worked as an accountant at PT Pakita Jaya from July 2020 to February 2022. Before joining the university as a lecturer in March 2022. Additionally, she is active in the Association of Young Accounting Scholars and currently serves as secretary. Mrs. Ayu Puspitasari holds a bachelor degree in accounting from Universitas Tanjung Pura, complete in 2018, and master degree in accounting with a focus on auditing and financial reporting from the same institution, which she completed in 2020. She's also participated in a student exchange program at Kochi University, Japan in 2020, 2016 to 2017. Please join me in welcoming Mrs. Ayu Puspitasari SAK MAK.
Okay, thank you, Miss Fatia, once again for the opportunity. So I will be the moderator for today's session. Good morning, greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's seminar titled Digital Transformation and Development of the Concept of Sustainability Accounting in the Latest Research Model. My name is Ayu Puspitasari, and I have the privilege of being your moderator for this enlightening session. Today, we are joined by two distinguished speakers who will share their insights on this important topic. Here with us, there is Dr. Nampuna and Dr. Usman from Gambia and Dr. Nampuna from Malaysia. And we will have a Q&A session after both speakers have delivered their presentations. So please hold your questions until then, or you can put your questions in the chat box. Before we begin, I would like to remind everyone here to kindly set your mobile devices to silent mode or take care of your microphone to ensure there are no disruptions during these presentations. For those who are joining us online, please use the chat features to submit your questions and we will address them during the Q&A session. I will call you by name or you can interact directly with our speakers by using the raise hand feature first. And then today's our first speaker is Dr. Nampuna Dolok Kultom from Sunway University, Malaysia. Please, the operator, share the screen of Dr. Nampuna CV. Okay, so Dr. Nampuna Dolok Gautam is a postdoctoral research fellow at the University Center for Environmental Social Governance at Sunway University, Malaysia. And Dr. Gautam has holds a PhD in accounting and finance from Monash University, where he received numerous accolades, including the Monash Researchers Graduate School Full Scholarship. He has extensive experience in sustainability research, corporate governance, and environmental social governance (ESG). And Dr. Gultom has been involved in numerous international research collaborations and has worked with various organizations, including the Sarawak government and the United Overseas Bank, UOB. And then FinLab to promote sustainability practices in business. So without further ado, please welcome Dr. Nampuna Golok Gultom to the stage. And Dr. Gultom, please proceed with your presentations.
All right, thank you very much. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
All right. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be back again, talking, even though it's online, but attending another ICMA event again, I think for the second time. I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting me back to this very fruitful event. So, yeah, so without further ado, let me just try to share my screen. Can you all see the screen?
Yes, Dr. Rapuna, we can see your
Okay,
screen.
cool. So, okay, so a little bit of changes as to where I am right now. I'm still in Sunway University, under Sunway Business School, but I'm no longer attached to the Sunway Center of Environmental, Social, and Governance. I'm currently being upgraded recently for a few months ago as a senior lecturer at the Department of Economics and Finance. So, but pretty much most of my research, some of my research are still related to financial accounting at large, corporate finance, and as well as ESG and corporate sustainability. So good to be back here for the second International Conference on Accounting and Business. So today I was given a task, I think by the organizer, to talk about sustainability accounting and how can we use sustainability accounting as a strategy for economic recovery and corporate sustainability. So just a little bit of background before I get started into my presentation. Here you can see the soon to be built, soon to be finished beautiful building of the Sunway Business School, which will be completed in 2026. Sun University is located in Sunway City, just slightly outskirts from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. I myself is an Indonesian, but for the past 14 to 15 years, I've been studying and also now teaching in Sunway City. So I'll be more than happy to welcome you all. One day, if let's say, you're planning to visit KL and then you want to visit Sunway University, please do contact me. That's my email, nampunaji@sunway.edu.my. Feel free to contact me anytime if you are around so I can show you around, and we probably, we can have a discussion maybe on the research ideas or any other engagement related. So without further ado, let me just start with the agenda for today. So I'm not going to be too technical for today, even though it's an academic conference, but I'll just sort of like try to brush through some of the key aspects of sustainability accounting. Even though from the perspectives of us as researchers in this area, this concept are probably not exactly new, but for practitioners, especially for people in the emerging countries, definitely this is something that needs to be explored further. And there are a lot of developments recently with regards to how are we going to transition from just producing reporting under the integrated reporting framework, but we are also seeing some of the evolutions in the standards when it comes to sustainability related operations of a firm, for example. So I'm going to just slightly, explain a little bit on the what is it about, and as well as can we actually see this sustainability accounting as a tool, right, to help firms or companies going through a certain economic recovery, right? Due to force majeure, like what we had experienced together 4 years ago during COVID pandemic. We're also going to talk about corporate sustainability, right? How the practices evolved and how it can relate to the sustainability accounting. I'm going to talk about challenges and opportunities surrounding the sustainability accounting, some of the practical implementations that can be done, as well as the future, of sustainability accounting. And lastly, I'm going to talk, a little bit on the recent I think, key empirical research that recently published to sort of like guide us into, for those researchers listening in today's conference, maybe the future direction of where we may, we may find some ideas, to explore further. All right. So let's just get started with the sustainability accounting. So the concept of sustainability accounting is, I would say, newly formed only recently, in the sense that um, for decades, the idea of, for example, corporate social responsibility, have been around, right? Maybe since the 1980s, maybe even earlier, right? And one of the key things that usually when people talk about corporate or social responsibility is, most of the time, it is, people may see CSR as a form of greenwashing, which means that they're just doing all this, right? Good things, good deeds to the society, help the environment, try to promote on how to be, operating in a, more green, essentially. It's just basically a marketing gimmick, right? So that's the earliest perception of, corporations doing CSR. But as time passes by, right, the data actually shows that for firms who are doing a lot more in CSR, particularly on things that are related to sustainability, right? If from the perspectives of investors, if you are investing in these firms, right, firms with a lot of sustainability initiatives, right, it turns out that they actually earn more compared to those firms who are not, do not have a lot of sustainable activities going on. And ever since then, sustainable investment, right, has been the key topics, everywhere, especially among in the capital markets, among the investors, right? It is essentially an investment in an economic activity that contributes to the environmental or social objective, right? In the 90s, in the early 2000s, it is probably more on the social part. But now we are moving forward towards, governance in the early 2000s, and now environmental, right? So essentially what does it do is that people start to think that I better redirect my investments to companies that are responsible, essentially, right? They do care about their social environment, right? They do care about environment, and they do care also about, maintaining good governance practices, right? So to anticipate this, we have to measure it somehow, right? There is a lack of tools or measurements, right, on how to actually incorporate all these non-financial aspects, right, in a firm, and how can we integrate it to the classical accounting system, essentially, right? So, and then nowadays, we are moving forward towards sustainability accounting. It all started from, some countries like in South Africa, Malaysia, and, some parts of the world, other countries that have started to actually impose, in terms of regulations, that sustainability reporting is essentially compulsory, right? We've seen this in South Africa. I think they are the first one to implement that. And Malaysia has started to actually make it mandatory, at least a sustainability statement from the listed firms since 2016, right? And then starting from next year, Malaysia is going to enforce a little bit more, right? in terms of their regulations towards sustainability reporting. And because of this demand, right? Because of this demand from investors, from a lot of stakeholders, right? On can we actually see the sustainability component in the financial reports or in the integrated reporting, um, so to speak. Therefore, sustainability accounting is currently becoming, sort of like um, a must to have in a company, right? And it is actually related to the practice of integrating ESG, these three components, environmental, social, and governance factors into financial reporting to ensure that companies account for their impacts on the environment and society in addition to their financial performance, right? So this demand of greater accountability for sustainability drives the needs to have sustainability accounting essentially, and it is also related now to the fact that any firms who are not committing to this, right, they are slowly to become perceived to be perceived as to be non-compliant and non-competitive, right? And there are a couple of reasons, for that. But before we go into that, right, the key things that we need to highlight from sustainability accounting is that it promotes transparency, right? Because um, initially, if we just see the financial report, we're only talking about numbers. We're only talking about how much profit did they make, how much expenses did they actually spend, but not so much. We don't know a lot of things with regards to how are they going to expand their firms while still be responsible to the society, right? So transparency is one of the key goals of sustainability accounting. And if you are transparent, definitely it helps to promote accountability as well, right? In this case, when we are talking about ESG, more specifically. And it helps as well the key leaders, right, to actually make decision making, right, on how to slowly transition their business practices into something more sustainable. So that's pretty much where the sustainability accounting is currently in place. And as I said, right, in the early 1990s, when when firms start to think of how can we stay profitable while also doing good to the society, as we can see here, there are clear difference, right, between two different portfolios. One that consists of firms who are actually not only profitable but actually doing good to the society, right? And versus those who are not exactly doing a lot of activities or doing a lot of um, um, initiatives, right, when it comes to sustainability, right? The difference is actually clear. And in fact, one thing to note here is that, if you're looking at the graph, even during the global financial crisis, right, in 2007, 2008, right, the portfolio for these firms with high sustainability performance is also still higher, right? So there was still higher performance. And this is, sort of like to show us there is no, eventually that, it will, going into sustainability journey, should be beneficial, for all firms, right? And, this graph show it very clearly on that note. And now that we are moving to incorporating the non-financial aspects to the annual report of a firm, definitely we need some frameworks, right? Definitely we need a lot of uh, you know rules that we need to follow, and a lot of organizations start to to come up, right, with some sort of standard matrices, indicators. So it will help the companies, the listed companies especially, um, to produce a better sustainability reporting, in the sense that, yes, if we are doing good to the society, if you are actually also have initiatives to help the environment, to help, fighting the climate change, what are the key indicators that we have to fulfill, or we have to follow, in order, you know, for us to call, that we are actually doing well, or we are actually doing impactful activities. And some of the key frameworks that we already have, right, such as GRI, from Global Reporting Initiatives, there are hundreds of indicators that they have developed, in the past decade. And a lot of firms actually follow this as a guideline, as well as a standard, right? Because currently there are no agreed, so to speak, regulations on how exactly are we going to report sustainability related activities. So GRI is, among the first to actually provide companies with certain guidelines, right? And not only about, environment, or carbon emission that are related to climate change aspect of the reporting. They also have, give a lot of guidelines or indicators when it comes to other social aspects of the firm, such as, human rights, right? Or corruption, right? Uh, and it's also related, to corporate governance. So, and then, as as it is being developed, there is a need to actually standardize sustainability standards. And that's why IFRS come up with the SASB, right? Sustainability Accounting Standards Board, right? Which is now part of the IFRS Foundation, right? SASB offers industry-specific standards now that help companies to disclose financially material sustainability information to investors. So, and there is also and it is also related to the International Integrated Reporting Council, right? As integrated reporting essentially try to mix between the two types of reports, financial and non-financial. So this is slowly becoming a norm, right? Following these key frameworks are, slowly becoming a norm. But it's not yet done, in the sense that although S1 and S2 part of the SASB standards have been launched, it covers mostly on, industry specific standards that currently being perceived as, the ones with the highest priorities. And I believe it is going to be continued to be developed over time, right? We cannot tackle climate change, by just a flip of hand. So that's why it is imperative that more and more people understand about these standards, because eventually this will be the norm, right? So awareness is key, but at the same time, we need a lot of experts, multidisciplinary experts will also help to create better standards in the future. And it's not like scientists were not being involved in the creation of these standards anyway. Yes, since the very beginning, real scientists, not just accountants, right, help to develop these standards. And it's pretty much help us to understand that, or at least to change our mindset, that we no longer see corporations you know, in terms of their objectives, is to maximize, is only to maximize shareholders' wealth, right? At the end of the day, I think most of you already heard the concept of triple bottom line, right? Which is people, planet, and profit, right? So creating economic value for the shareholders is no longer enough, right? We need to do, you know, good things as well, right? To people, right? Um, we need to make sure that the social impact of a company, right, translates well to the society, right? Such as, you know, labor practices, community involvement, right? Customers' welfare, and also to the planet, right? Whether our business, you know, affects, uh, you know, the environment, you know, in a way that is destructive, or are, you know, are we producing our products at the expense of really high levels of carbon footprints? Do we need a lot of natural resources in order for us to produce products and to create profit? So all these things have to be regarded as equal, right? So numbers are no longer the only important aspect that matters for firms, but also people and planet as well. And essentially, that's exactly why we need sustainability accounting, and we need to integrate that to corporate reporting, right? But even though there are already key frameworks that we can use directly, right, from the perspective of the companies, there's still challenges, right? Because um, some of this, or even most of these indicators, sometimes companies are, you know, finding it difficult to follow, finding it difficult um, to actually fulfill the required standard that the standard actually already set, right? So that's why it is still work in progress, right? It is still work in progress in a sense. Now, another thing that makes firms reluctant, right, to actually follow closely on this trend, right, is because not only that is the complexity of it, right? Maybe they follow certain things that are easier to be implemented, right? But part of the things is that they are not exactly sure how to measure. They are not exactly sure what kind of technology that they need to use. And most of the time, if you look back, you know, for the past 1 or 2 decades ago, those firms who actually start embarking their journey to sustainability, it is actually related very closely to certain disaster that happened in a specific company, right? So, for example, Unilever, right? Some of their operations require, I mean, you know, in order for them to be able to, you know, to operate their factories well, right? They consumes a lot of stuff. They consumes a lot of natural resources, and one of the things is water, right? So, in one of their facilities, in one of their factories, they realized that getting fresh water is getting more and more difficult in that particular area. I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is something in South Africa case. So since 2010, right, they decided to create what they like to call Unilever's Sustainable Living Plan, right? And they have been doing this until today, right? And back in 2020, they launched a report, and it's a very extensive report. I will welcome you to, you know, to look at it and to see the transformations that Unilever has, you know, has done, right? To actually going on sustainability journey without, you know, without even sustainability being a trend, like, you know, like in the recent years, right? So part of the reason is because they need to recover from something. They need to recover from certain hardship or disaster, right? And by looking at, let's say, the examples in in Unilever, we realize that it can be applied into so many other contexts in terms of recovery, right? So that's why uh, ever since the pandemic of COVID in 2020, there are a lot of companies starting to realize that, okay, if such a global event, global pandemic like COVID can affect, you know, the operations of the company so tremendously, that means we need to be prepared better, and we need to change our business practices. We need to change our business processes, to account for disasters that might happen in the future, that may happen in the future. So a lot of companies now are seeing sustainability practices, right, as a pathway, right, for economic recovery, right? And we have seen this, we've seen clear evidence of this since 2020, 2021, 2022, right? And it's still, ongoing, right? And it is actually not related to something fancy or something complex. It could be just, about energy efficiency, right? Um, how can they make sure that they consume, even though it's not, less energy per se, but using the energy more efficiently, right? A lot of discussion as well with regards to circular economy, right, has emerged for the past few years, and also waste reduction, right? Um, there are a lot of new startups, right, where their main objective is to basically provide solutions, right, on how we as a society at large, need to manage waste, better, right? And so why all these initiatives help, right? As a driver for recovery? Well, it's very simple. If you're operating in a more efficient environment, right? And if you can manage a lot of things, better, more efficiently, and more effectively, definitely it has something to do. It will affect the financial aspect, of the firm, right? Such as cost efficiency, right? And definitely it helps, um, you know, in terms of trying to recover, from a recent, economic hardships, right? So, and it helps to improve resilience as well. Okay, so and because of that, push towards green energy, right, uh, you know, have been very essential and very crucial in the past few years. We've seen increase in sales in solar panel, electric cars, right? Recently, I think in the more recent years, Tesla is not the only, household name when it comes to electric vehicles. We've seen, BYD and a lot of other companies from China, right, currently picking up, right? That shows that not only from the perspective of the firms, but also from the perspectives of customers, right? People in general are more aware, right, that they have to have a more sustainable uh, lifestyle, right? So if they can afford it, so to speak, if they are willing to change, um, then they will start, doing a lot of sustainability related decisions, right? Um, so yeah, so apart from um, using sustainability as a driver for recovery, right? It is certainly very closely related to risk management. Okay, so like for example, due to the climate change, um, there are a lot of companies now monitoring the paths of hurricanes or tornado. right? Which, thankfully we already have the data, right? A better data than, let's say, about a decade ago. And we can visualize this and we can predict this, a little bit better, in the recent years. So, like, for example, in the US, if um, certain areas, they are more prone to hurricane, that means it's a way that companies will try their best to develop their next factories or essential facilities outside or very far away from this area, for example. Tornado also affect a lot of areas, typhoon, right? Philippines got hit quite frequently by typhoons, as well as Taiwan. Even if they cannot move there or build a new facility far away from the path of tornadoes or typhoon or hurricanes, at least they can start to think of how can we still continue this operation on the existing facility, but we can be more resilient when typhoon comes, when hurricane comes. So it is essentially part of risk management as well, right? And not only that, we are also talking about the use of resources, right? Most of I would say maybe a lot of our natural resources are pretty much, we cannot produce them, right? It has to finish one day, right? So how can we use them less but still produce or the same quality products in the future, right? So all these things are related to risk management as well. And some solutions like climate risk assessment tools definitely help, right? To at least see uh, how can they manage their supply chains better, right? Um, and also the viewpoint where ESG is now part of risk management is also one of the integral point that a lot of companies starting to find it important, right? Um, not doing well in terms of social aspects of the operations can also be can also increase the risk, right, of the firm. They need to start looking at human rights factor, employee well-being, right? Because it is considered as risk, right? If their employees, if the companies do not take care of, let's say, the mental health of the employees, that could also jeopardize the operation in the long run, right? We don't want a lot of, really high turnover, that definitely will impact the efficiency of the operations in a firm, right? So yes, sustainability accounting definitely has a role when it comes not only just for as a driver of recovery, but also, in the long run, it will be a norm for risk management, as well as, continuous cost reduction, right? If we can do it more efficiently, um, that's basically the direction that we are seeing in the market. So we also looking into corporate responsibility in a larger scale, right? As some of you may know, we have 17 SDGs now, Sustainable Development Goals, right? That we have to sort of like every country have to follow and to report the current progress of them. right? That is also part of the driving factors, right? On how firms have, whether they like it or not, they have to go for it. They have to go for a sustainability journey. Um, there are many things uh, beyond the short-term profits that firms need to look at now, right? And at the end of the day, right, it's the importance of accountants' role, right, on how to measure them, right, will be very important uh, to this journey, right? Um, as we know, there are 17 goals. Currently, most countries are doing well on certain metrics, not very far behind from the target for most of the goals. We are still learning, right? There are a lot of things that we don't know how to solve, we don't know how to measure. So it's going to be an ongoing discussion, an ongoing thing, at least you know until 2050, if not further, right? So if we look again into the details of sustainability accounting, as I mentioned before, part of the reason that makes it difficult, right, to develop this is data collection and standardization, right? We are lacking of necessary technology sometimes to measure a lot of things. But with the growth of AI industry, blockchain, right? Sooner or later, some of these problems may be tackled, in a better way, right? And so it gives us opportunities for innovation, right? Gives us, new industry emerging in the market, right? To actually solve this, right? And we also have to take into account that the push for better regulations, more stringent regulations are going to stay, right? We are we are no we are not looking back. This is something that we have to adapt, right? Whether we like it or not. So to recap, right? Sustainability accounting is basically a tool, right? It is essentially a tool for business to navigate economic recovery, mitigate risk, and to ensure long-term corporate resilience, right? Um, for companies who are not transition, quick enough into the sustainability journey, definitely, it requires a lot of leadership commitment into this. I think in Indonesia, if I'm not mistaken, a few months back, President Jokowi mentioned that we probably not looking into meeting the net zero target in 2050, but maybe in 2060 instead, right? And there is also some of the experts also say that this goal of 2060, there is a high probability that it could end up in 2070 instead. So a lot of challenges in Indonesia, but I'm still hopeful. I'm still hopeful. The new generations, the Generation Z and the Generation Alpha, that I hope that the new generations will be the major driving force for this, especially in Indonesia. I myself is a millennial, and I start to get aware of these issues, even when I was studying in college, and I also already um, try from my own capacity to start on, producing a lot of, research or, discussions on how we can enhance our sustainability uh, initiatives, right? In any scale, right? So it requires, all stakeholders, right? Not just it doesn't necessarily mean that if the leaders are not exactly, on board, right, with a lot of sustainability initiatives, we ourselves can start, to do more, right? Um, from the perspective of counting students, for example, they may come up with a certain method or certain, software or certain tools that could help, the integration of the sustainability accounting in the future, right? So we are still looking for this to develop in the future, right? Even though we already have standards, right? Like IFRS S1 and S2, certainly more science, right? More credible science, will help um, to improve this in the future. I believe that, in the presence of AI, a lot of research, either from the scientific natural science community as well as social science community, can help, can be produced faster, right? So eventually these standards, would be better and better, and also the measurement will be more accurate, and that's the direction that we are heading into. So just to give you a background from the research perspectives, um, I think it is a good um, stepping stone, at least, since AOS has finally published some of the papers that are discussed in the AOS conference back in 2022, right? Uh, as you probably already know, the journal called Accounting Organizations and Society is one of the highest rated journals in accounting. And there are a few interesting research uh, that are currently emerged, right? They currently already published um, related to sustainability, right? And I think it can help us to understand better, right, on how we can um, review certain things. We can look into, more research ideas to help um, improve, right, the sustainability accounting in the future, right? So you can look into the Christensen et al. 2024. It's basically the summary of the 5 papers that they are highlighted by the AOS special section on sustainability, right? So there are 5 papers that they discuss, right? I'm going to discuss mainly only just the first one, right, which is the investor reactions to ESG initiatives by Garavaglia, right? But I will scan through a little bit from the other studies as well, right? So what is it that is currently being done out there when it comes to research in sustainability, especially related to accounting, right? So essentially, Garavaglia examines how investors react differently to the lifespan of ESG initiatives, right? And they put a specific focus on negative reactions when firms stop such initiatives, right? So initially, um, there are firms who haven't started, doing any ESG initiatives, and there are firms that are already doing ESG initiatives, right? So they found that in the investors' reaction, right, at the time of starting new initiatives, right, the difference is not exactly, significantly different, right? But they will see a really significant difference when they stop any of the ESG initiatives, right? So investors react significantly more negatively when a firm discontinues an ESG initiative compared to stopping a general business initiative, right? So this shows that it is already ingrained somehow, right, in the investor's perception that yes, you are starting a new ESG initiatives, good, right? That's basically what you should do, right? But the moment you stop, right, doing those ESG initiatives, right, then the negative reaction are very, pronounced, right? As you can see here in the graph, right? So if we compare two initiatives, right? If you stop general business initiative, yes, the investor reaction will be negative, right? But when it comes to ESG initiative, it's always lower than the general business initiative, right? Especially also in the second hypothesis that they have, if it's related to something that is highly ethical, right? If the initiatives promotes highly ethical operations, highly ethical, activities, the moment they start to stop it, right? The investor reaction drop significantly, okay? And the way they measure this is basically through experiments, right? So there are four different experiments. The first experiment that they, the findings are, confirmed that investors have similar reactions when firms start ESG and non-ESG initiatives. So at the beginning, when they start the initiatives, right, the investors, there are no significant difference between the two. But the moment they stop the initiative, right, the reaction of stopping ESG initiative are much worse. The second experiment showed that investors react more negatively when a higher ethicality ESG initiative is stopped compared to a lower ethicality ESG initiatives, right? Which means that it puts more emphasis, right, on the importance of not just doing ESG, as a matter of requirements, right? But those initiatives that is perceived to be the higher ethical ESG initiatives, when the firms decide to stop it, right, investors will react, more significantly negative, right? The third experiment that they did basically finds that, investors' feelings of ethical responsibility mediate the negative reactions to stopping an ESG initiative. Investors feel morally responsible, right, for the negative outcomes, even when they do not make the decisions, right? So what it's trying to say here is that even though the investors are not the actual decision maker, right? Whenever the company is stopping certain ESG initiative, right? They feel morally responsible as well, right? Because of those decisions. And the last one, the experiment explored the role of initiative effectiveness and financial justification. And it shows that investors react more negatively to stopping more effective ESG initiatives, but providing a financial justification for stopping the initiative reduces this negative reaction, though it does not eliminate it entirely. Sometimes ESG initiatives can be costly too, which is, parts and puzzles of, the complexity of doing more ESG related initiatives. Sometimes it's just because it's too expensive and we need to stop because it's becoming too expensive. if financial justification is the reason, it's the reaction of the investors are still negative, right? But it's reduced. It's not so pronounced, right? But it doesn't mean that it eliminates the negative reactions entirely. So from this study, what can we learn, right? We learned that firms need to consider the potential negative consequences of these continuing ESG initiatives, as this can affect investor sentiment, right? And even if they have no choice but to stop the ESG initiatives, right? Uh, Perhaps providing financial justification may soften the effect a little bit, but it will never truly fully mitigate the investors' concerns, right? So this is something that all standard setters and regulators, should look into, right? Every time in the future, uh, you know, that certain ESG, especially the highly ethically ESG initiatives needs to be stopped, right? There is a consequences uh, from the perspective of the investors um, demanding for the rationale behind the stopping of those ESG initiatives, right? So that's studies from Garavaglia. I would like to highlight the other study as well, right? Such as the role of assurance in sustainability reporting by Demise et al., auditor involvement in sustainability reporting by Adams and Liu, right? And moral consistency and moral licensing by Miller. So just a little bit before I stop here, the study by Miller is very interesting in a sense that they look at the data of taxi drivers in New York City. And in the US, I think in New York, more particularly, there is a database that basically records all the taxi journey, right? All the taxi journey. And they have all the details, whether or not a particular taxi driver actually converted to using the hybrid cars, or they are still using the normal petrol, petrol car. So, or, electric car, right? So they find that if the taxi drivers decide to change their taxi to become a hybrid car, right? It gives the taxi driver a certain moral licensing, which means that, okay, I've already done my part. I'm becoming more sustainable now, right? I'm doing good to the society because I'm not using the, 100% petrol, car, right? So because of this, right? Because of this moral licensing, whenever that they pick up passengers from an area they are, let's say, unclean, right? Full of garbage everywhere. For some reason, they tend to charge the passengers with higher fare. Because because the perspective is how, see, it's such a mess, the place that I'm picking up this passenger. I've already done my part, right? Why can other people also do their part, right? And it's just a fascinating phenomenon being recorded by the team. That even though we already have the right mindset to change, right? At least to begin to change and start the sustainability journey, we also have to take into account that we are not doing, what they coined the term moral licensing, right? If you're doing something good, it doesn't give you the license to actually judge others just because, in this case, charging them higher fees, higher fare, just because you are doing something good on one thing, right? So, and it gives us a lot of especially to me, it gives me a lot of questions when it comes to um, how to maintain a certain moral consistency when we are doing, good things in the context of ESG. Um, it's a mindset that is fascinating to me, at least, that we need to consider in the future that apparently doing good can also create further implications that we are actually we don't know that it can actually happen, right? So that's basically what I have. I think I have to stop now here. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation, and I will open up for Q&A. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Napuna, for the insightful presentations. And I will give the audience a little summary about your presentations. So, Dr. Napuna, today's talk about sustainability accounting, and we are exploring the crucial topic of sustainability accounting and its role in shaping corporate practices. And then sustainability accounting integrates environmental, social, and governance (ESG) factors into financial reporting. This integration allows companies to account for their impacts on the environment and society alongside their financial performance. In a sense, it emphasizes the need for business to measure and report their environmental and social impacts, aligning their strategies with broader societal goals. And to guide organizations in this endeavor, several key frameworks have emerged, including the Global Reporting Initiative (GRI), and then the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board (SASB), and the International Integrated Reporting Council. These frameworks provide essential guidelines and standards for reporting on sustainability practices, ensuring transparency and accountability. A fundamental concept in sustainability accounting is the triple bottom line, which focuses on three pillars: people, planet, and profit. This model encourages business to consider social, environmental, and economic dimensions in their operations, fostering a holistic approach to sustainable business practices. And then Mr. Dr. Napuna also give us explanation about current empirical research on sustainability accounting. So I think this is the summary of Dr. Napuna's presentations, and I hope that you can still stay in the Zoom meeting, Mr. Napuna, because we will have the Q&A session after the second speaker finish presentation also. Okay, so thank you, Dr. Napuna, for the insightful presentation once again. And now let us invite our second speaker, Mr. Dr. Usman Jallo. Hello, Dr. Usman.
Hello. Hi.
Okay, well, I will introduce our second speaker, Mr. Usman Jallo. Please, the operator, share the screen of Dr. Usman CV. Okay, so Mr. Usman Jallo is currently the finance manager at the National Water and Electricity Company in the Gambia, and also serves as a finance specialist with Democracy International Incorporation. He holds a master in accounting from Universitas Erlangga, Indonesia, and is a chartered fraud examiner now. His research interests include Islamic finance, environmental accounting, and business ethics. Mr. Jallo has a wealth of experience in financial management, international cooperations, and research in accounting and finance. So this is a brief introduction of Mr. Usman's profile. And Without further ado, let us hear from Mr. Usman, and please join me in welcoming Mr. Usman to deliver his presentation. Mr. Usman, the stage is yours.
Okay, thank you so much, Madam Moderator. And also thank you to my fellow colleagues who just presented. Dr. Napuna, thank you so much. That was a well presented one. Yeah, but first of all, so let me share my screen first, please. I think I need to charge it. Okay. Okay. Can you see my screen now? No?
Okay.
Okay. All right, sorry about that. So my screen is up, if you can see me. So
Yes, we can see your screen.
thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much for the invite. I will take you through let's take it here. Yeah, I will take you through ESG and reporting responsible investing in the Gambia. Well, then I will make it more holistic, taking Africa, as an example, but specifically taking the Gambia, yeah, just for specific purposes. So ESG is something really new for us. Honestly speaking, I think we only interact with ESG at an international level. That is, we have seen research institutions, we have seen universities all around the world now having an institute specifically dealing with ESG research, ESG consultant, and so on and so forth. But these ideas are still new, fresh to us, that we are trying to inculcate in our laws, in our financial regulations. Just a brief background for you to know, the Gambia, or this part of sub-Saharan Africa, we have taken most of our financial reporting standards, most of our accounting standards um, from the UK. That is specifically to say from the International Financial Reporting Standards. So normally we inline our local gaps to those ones. So delving with into the presentation, the world needs to change. Well, then used to be the time when accountants are only crunching numbers, plugging figures. I think it's more now of doing something called responsible accounting. Well, how do we do that? How do we make so the environment, the society, governance, all these things are embedded in our account? What are our responsibilities here? Um, I will also take you through the types of ESG investments, and then the approach that we are taking here in the Gambia, specifically, and the sub-region at large. Yeah, the world needs to change. I said earlier that we are no more in those era whereby accounting and finance professional are mostly known for um, plugging numbers, making analysis, investments, everything relating to financial figures. It's now true that we thinking of how do we save the environment, how do we report the smallest things that impacts us as a society, that impacts us governance wise, politically, and how do us accountants, how do us finance professionals come into play. So I work in the energy sector. That is the National Water and Electricity Company for the Gambia. And one of the things that we are trying to look at now is energy, carbon. How do we take carbon? How do we trade in carbon? So we are having these discussions with UK, and we also have these parliamentarians who are coming with legislators now, legislators in the areas of carbon trading. How do we trade carbon in the Gambia and other parts of the world? So we have one particular bank which is really doing very well in this area, Access Bank. They have started something like that. So how do we source greener energy? How do we go away from generators? In the Gambia, we use generators as our source of electricity. How do we go away with that to solar panels? Quite expensive. Smart meters, quite expensive. But now we are going to smart meters, especially in the areas of water. We have this project that is trying to replace all water meters in the Gambia. To make them more smart. You can be at your home and then have this digital stuff doing things without any impacts in the environment. Solar panels have been here for a very long time, but in a very smaller scale because of it's quite expensive to install, to maintain solar panels. The sustainability of it is another discussion. Travel individually. We travel every day. Um, how do we move from our automated cars that we use in fuel cars to electric cars? Well, in this part of the world, this is something far-fetched. Like it's not something that we are expecting very soon. This will take a very long time because we don't have any roadmap for it yet. We don't have any infrastructure yet to have smart cars. What we do, we drive using petrol. But then in the carbon offset, how us as individuals, how can we um, reduce our travel times? Instead of traveling by a flight, why don't you use another mode of transportations? How do we do these things? Food and agriculture, better animal welfare. Okay, in this part of the world, we agriculture is the backbone of any nation, right? But now, how do we move to smart digital agriculture? You know, food meals, avoiding deforestation spam. Okay, deforestation here is devastating to say the least. How do we cut trees and plant trees? How do we do that? We don't do that in this part of the world at all. So you'll be cutting trees, exporting trees. So we have this slogan, the timber that cries. There is this red timber that cries, and this red timber is used all over the world. All of it is taken from sub-Saharan Africa, exported outside, made to finished goods, and then imported back to us. Housing, better installations. How do we um, construct houses in the sense that one, it saves energy. Two, health and safety wise, the house is um, accessibility of the house societally. Persons with disability, how can they access the house? Appliances, recycling, you know, um, customer purchasing. How do we avoid companies with poor reputations? Well, we have tons of that here. That we are really working on, coming with new regulations every day, with new regulatory authorities, rating companies, rating them on based on their ESGs, based on their social corporate responsibilities. How do you rate them? The reputation is not only about customer service, no, it's about how friendly a company can be to the environment. What are the governance structures of companies? How do they how do you call it? How do they inline their policies to the laws of the land? How do they do that? Sustainable investment. How do we do investment sustainably? Investment that are friendly to the environment, investment that are friendly to the society, and investment that are in line with rules, regulations, and laws of the land. Okay. So sustainability, balancing the claims of the present against the claim of the future. Well, anywhere you see change, change takes time and change takes resistance. And that's the problem right now we are facing. We want to implement change now in the nearest future, but then who is willing to jump into the wagon? Who? Making the world a better place, defining a more balanced use of natural resources. Well, we have abundance of natural resources, you know, abundant to the extent, we cannot quantify it. But abusing anything that you abuse, obviously there will become a time it will fade away. So how do we balance this? Those timbers we have, how do we cut them and still replace them? The sand mines we have, how do we go to them, dig them, and then have them replaced? How can we make sure that there's a continuity and then there's a sustainability for the future coming, for the generation unborn? Tackling climate change and caring of the environment. Well, tackling climate change can be in so many things. How do we encourage companies? I think we should now think of more of not only profit, but how can the companies come, invest, and also be friendly to the environment? You know, building a fairer society, driving better corporate governance. I said this earlier, aligning corporate governance, company policies with the laws or the regulations of a particular land. Whenever you come in to invest in a particular country, if these policies are in place, if these regulatory authorities are there to make sure implementation is done, I think any company that comes in should come with those initiatives, having their corporate governance structures in line with the country or with the rules of the land. So all these things can be achieved by ESG, investment, because all of it, one way or the other, talks about either the environment, the society, or the governance structures. What is ESG? Environment, social, and governance. I have been saying this since I started this presentation. Biodiversity loss. Well, in the Gambia, particularly in the Gambia, we have lost so many diversity. But now we have people who went abroad, studied blue financing. Now they are back doing some very interesting and very good research in blue economies. So now we are expecting some change to come, but we have already lost biodiversity in the Gambia. There used to be a time when you go to the river, the fish that you catch then and now they are totally different. So companies come in. I think we have a responsibility to play as advisors, as company executives. We have key decision making. When we are in key decision making positions, we should be aware of these things. If we are in the sector that deals in fisheries, biodiversity loss should be addressed in all forms. If you are dealing with the sewage, ideally, like I said, I am from the energy sector, but then here we have both energy and water, no, electricity and water as a company. So I had the finance at the water section. So what are our positions in terms of treating wastewaters? Do we just go to the sea and then dispose them? No. Greenhouse gas emissions, energy efficiency, renewable energy. Well, renewable energy is something else. I said earlier, quite expensive, very expensive in when you want to invest in renewable energy. But this is something that is possible with partnership. You know, social mass migration. You all know the highest migration rate is in sub-Saharan Africa. Um, just a week ago, we have 270 mainly youths. So how do we bring these companies to come in, invest, employ youths, and then sustain them? Yeah, so this is a discussion that should be ongoing. Wealth distribution in this part of the world, or all over the world, wealth distribution is, is a huge topic. I have capitalists all over, but when you distribute wealth in equity, you cannot 100% equally distribute wealth, right? But when we do this in an equity form, I think this will reduce even the local migration from the urban areas to the rural areas, or from the rural areas to the urban areas in search of jobs, in search of living in bigger cities, access to healthcare. Well, one of social corporate responsibilities of companies that I know is creating access. Okay, I am a new company in a land or in a village whereby you have the healthcare system is way down the line, like in inland. What do you do to connect the indigens? This is just a component of social corporate responsibilities to those places. How can the government come in place and put every 5-10 kilometers a a health care service? How can we have that? How can we have national insurance policies? These are some things that we don't have. We leverage on your own personal wealth to finance your own health. Workplace health and safety. I've said this earlier. How do we structure buildings? We should create an environment, a working environment whereby health and safety is a priority. Now are the days where you have all companies having health and safety committees. If you are working in the manufacturing industries, bringing stringent measures in terms of wearing helmets, in terms of boots, raincoats. How do we make sure health and safety is the first thing that we do in our workplaces? Diversity, inclusion is important in every society you go to, in every company. Person with disability, women, men, sex, gender, all should be inclusive. That's when diversity comes. Now you go to website of company website, you see they have a special section for inclusion and diversity. All these things are part of ESGs now. So employment rights, child labor and slavery, these things have been happening, is still happening, and it will continue to happen for some period, obviously. So but companies, how can companies help invest or put these things in their policies, put these things in their manuals in terms of employment rights? What are your rights? Child labor. At what age should a child be deemed necessary to work? You can have a child of 12 years, of a 10 years child working and being paid. So how slavery is something else. We have modern day slavery. So we have this deal that we are already having with Saudi also, but now there is a lot of controversy that they are taking most of our brain drain manpower and then taking it to to those countries. So controversial weapons such as cluster bombs, well, I just pray and hope all these things will not um, happen in this part of the world. Governance, executive compensation. Quite honestly, executives are normally compensated very heavily with 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 fat incentives. But all these things is geared towards the performance of those executives. All right. But the company's policies should be in line with these compensations based on performance and based on merit. Bribery and corruption in this part of the world is all over the world rather, because you see protests every day. Companies bribing government, government bribing companies, corruption in and out in terms of governance structures, who should lead, who should not lead. I it's quite stressful if we don't put all these things in place. Independent directors, board of directors should be as independent as an external person. Hopefully they are external in this case. How these things, how are they going to affect the companies? If the directors are not independent, obviously this will have a direct impact in the performance of the company. We have seen the cases, we have seen the collapse of Thomas Cook, seen the corruption scandal of some other few companies, you know, Toshiba and so on. So we have seen how corruption and how independence of directors can lead to the collapse of these companies. Ethics in a business. Ethics should be in a daily routine for every business or for every company, be it private, government also. But how do we make laws? There must be stringent laws, stringent policies in place that serves as reward and punishment. Do right, you are rewarded. Unethical, you are being punished. So how do we mix transparency, disclosure of ESG criteria? ESG is one thing, but setting up an ESG criteria also is another thing to make sure ESG effectively works. Whistleblowing policies. What are the implications of whistleblowing policies? How do you make sure there are whistleblowing policies in place and witness protections also in place? The policies should be quite robust, should be quite stressful, and there must be a confidence for a person to be doing whistleblowing. And implication of business strategy on social and sustainability issues. The penetration strategies of businesses in any society has a huge impact in terms of the instead of the social and sustainability issues of that society. Okay, so integrating ESG. Well, currently, like I said, we don't have, okay, we are practicing ESG more so as a social corporate responsibility, right? We are not taking ESG as serious as it is. So we have this program called Water Conservation Program. This is more of a social corporate responsibility, but in an hindsight, this is a environment issue in an ESG component. So how do we integrate this? How do we take ESG and integrate it in our companies? Core portfolio analysis to include ESG credentials. ESG rating form part of decisions. So, but we don't have rating companies in terms of ESGs. Like I said, we have this carbon trading legislation or act, that bill rather, that is coming in Parliament, which hopefully will be implemented, and then from there we will be kicking off our ESG, our ESG strategies. Rating agencies, well, there is rating agencies universally, but in this part of the world, we don't have rating agencies that are quite reputable, to do ratings, or that are very trusted to do that. Evaluation of ESG can be difficult. Lack of data, well, it's quite difficult. This presentation is not only Gambia, but taking other parts of the world, integrate data received from other parts of the world. But specifically, if you want to do a holistic analysis of ESG in the Gambia or in sub-Saharan Africa, it's quite difficult because you cannot have a single data. Like, okay, I follow this. Okay, Prof. Iman. Prof. Iman is the head of the ESG Institute at the University of Erlangen. So they have a website whereby you see all data from the Indonesia Stock Exchange. You see everything there. Here we don't have it. So it's totally difficult to have ESG or to assess an ESG of a company. But like I said, hopefully when this carbon trading policy comes, no, sorry, bill is acted in as a law, then obviously there will be a roadmap on ESG rating, not ESG evaluation for companies. So the type of ESG investment, the type of ESG there can be two: impact portfolio, thematic portfolio, and systematic. So the impact portfolio will be in a more smaller scale in the sense that you are more targeting the private market, and directly involved. The thematic portfolio, this can be you take some themes that you want to do, some thematic areas that you want to invest in. You know, this can be both for private and then public. Okay, themes can be different. Like I said earlier, you have what we call water conservation. This water conservation is part of environment. In an example here, you have renewable energy farms. How do you come to renewable energy farms and then invest in those farms? Take a niche market, invest in those market as a pilot program. When there is a success, then obviously you move to a systematic form, taking a whole holistic of an industry and then doing an ESG investment on it. Capturing all the environment, society, and then governance. Uh, but our approach here will be more of a systematic. I thought of it thoroughly to do more of a thematic area, but that will be quite minimal. The Gambia we have around 2 million people. The census came, I think, a month ago, and we are just 2 million people. So obviously, we can make a whole holistic research in terms of systematic ESG portfolio. Why? Because the low cost, well diversified portfolio to reduce risk, sustainable for large proportion of investors. So and then retain sector, sorry, retain sector weightings, capture broad market returns. Yeah, yeah. So the systematic ESG portfolios in practice, improving the ESG credentials of a portfolio. Keynotes here: move from a market cap to ESG rating. I said we don't have any ESG rating here. It's more of the global ESG rating that we will benchmark. Oil and gas not excluded. Production, well, we don't have all these things in place. So we have a oil and gas. We expect to have that. Our neighbor Senegal is already leveraging on that, which we think we share a border and we have a potential oil and gas that we can tap. So investors are trying to come in and do an assessment on it. If that is done, then these things can be in place. Building a fairer society, strong ESG credentials, better long-term prospects. So I want to take you through this gap, what is included. A very strong ESG credentials, a weaker ESG credentials. So the Gambia is a very small country, and the market is also quite small. So we don't have, let's say in Nigeria, for example, you have 150 million people. That market environment, investors can come with low risk, invest in an economy, hoping to have that market there. But in the Gambia, you are inviting people to come to invest, but then to tap in other markets outside the Gambia. Well, you can come and do your manufacturing here, have your local market, and have your international market. It's possible. We have one or two companies now doing that already. They came in, established their parent company is in the Gambia, but they have other sub branches across sub-Saharan Africa because we have these governance issues which are very easy to set up a company. The tax havens are there and all those stuff, so it's easier to set up a company here and then channel branches all across Africa. So we have one or two companies who are doing that, which is an interesting initiative that also can capture some parts of ESG. So I take you through. Yes, the destination it was it. There is light at the end of the tunnel. Like I said, there can be challenges, there can be risks, time consuming, expensive, but then at the end of the tunnel, we believe that there is light and there is hope that ESG is achievable in this country. One, use a sensible ESG approach where available. Okay, you have to do an assessment first. Like I said, it's difficult to do an evaluation of an ESG in a company here, but there can be an assessment, a dex review assessment, whatever assessment that you can do to see gaps, loopholes where you can invest in terms of GSG, where you can intervene. Maintain portfolio risks as low as possible. Better, more robust ESG metrics, a more consistent approach, great impact of understanding. Third, wider product choices, better index construction, full asset class coverage. Yeah, so there is a light at the end of the tunnel, but obviously with all these struggles and here. So this will be the end of my presentation. If you have any questions you want to add on whatever I said, I will gladly receive your comments. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Usman, for the insightful presentation. Now I will give the audience a little bit summary about your presentations. So you talked about ESG and responsible investing in the Gambia. And responsible investing, particularly in the context of the Gambia, focuses on integrating ESG principles into investment decisions to promote sustainable development. And the Gambia is increasingly recognizing the importance of ESG factors in shaping investment strategies. And by aligning investments with ESG criteria, the country aims to foster sustainable growth that benefits both the economy and its citizens, addressing local challenges while attracting responsible investment also. And the world needs to change. There is a pressing need for collective actions to make the world a better place. Global challenges such as climate change, inequality, and social injustice require transformative changes in how we conduct business and invest. Emphasizing ESG principles can drive these changes by encouraging companies and investors to prioritize sustainability and social responsibility in their operations and investment decisions. And then what is ESG? ESG encompasses three key areas: environmental, social, and governance factors. Environmental focuses on biodiversity loss, greenhouse gas emissions, and energy efficiency. And then social addresses issues like mass migration, wealth distributions, and access to healthcare. And governance involves corporate governance aspects such as executive compensations, bribery, corruption, and the presence of independent directors. Each of these components plays a crucial role in evaluating the overall sustainability and ethical impact on the investment. And then investors increasingly consider these factors when assessing a company's long-term viability and risk exposure. And then types of ESG investment. ESG investments can be categorized into three types: impact portfolio, thematic portfolio, and systematic portfolio. Impact portfolio investment specifically aim at generating positive social and environmental outcomes alongside financial returns, and then thematic portfolio focuses on specific themes related to ESG, such as renewable energy or gender equality. And then the last is systematic portfolio integrates ESG factors across the investment process, aligning with traditional investment strategies. And then I think that's all the summary from Mr. Usman's presentations. And now let's go on to the Q&A session for both speakers. So I will give the opportunity first for live interaction. Is there anyone who want to ask directly to our speakers? You may press the raise hand features in your Zoom. Anyone? Well, if not, I will first read from the chat box. Yeah, I saw some people has already shared the question in the chat box. So I will read first from, let me see. Where is it? Okay. So from Mr. Muhammad Rifandi to Dr. Nampuna. The implementation of ESG in companies in Indonesia is still not optimal in implementing ESG. What are the challenges of ESG implementation in Indonesia and solutions to accelerate ESG implementation in Indonesia? So please, Dr. Nampuna.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for the question. I think I already answered in the chat box, but essentially, we don't have regulations yet that covers the entirety of sustainability practices, especially with regards to listed firms. So if I can share what happened in Malaysia, they have started to make it mandatory for all listed firms in Bursa Malaysia to provide sustainability statement. So it's not necessarily a report back in 2016, right? So essentially, they started in a very simple way, whereas like just explain to the investors what are the related sustainability activities or related practices that they have done, right? So it started from a very simple thing, and then as years passes by, the requirements are getting more and more stringent over time. Now, there are a lot of reasons why this might be the case. One is that certainly in the business world, there are still, at the time, there were still some of the from the perspective of the leaderships of the firm, they were not particularly inclined to go to embark in sustainability journey. And it is always there is this stigma that doing more for the society, doing more for sustainability is essentially costly. But as I mentioned in my presentation, actually, in the long run, all these initiatives are pretty much going more inclined to the cost cutting or cost efficiency rather than increasing tremendously the level of cost for nothing, right? So and it is part of the risk management too now, right? So, for example, like flood, right? Indonesia is very prone to flood and earthquake, right? So if there's no standard on how we can sort of calculate this as a form of mitigation. For example, uh, we know already, right, that certain months, even though it's not like, you know, in the 90s where we know exactly when is the rain season, for example, but now we can track, you know, rain better using technology, right? So at the time where uh, the Badan Meteorology and Geofisika can actually tells us in these certain areas there will be flood, right? In the next 1 month or so, that would eventually affected so many different things in terms of business operations, right? So if the factories of certain companies are located in a you know flood prone area, then they must do something about it. Otherwise, if they are always get affected by flood, right? It is at the end of the day not going to be cost efficient. They're going to lose a lot of money because of this. Same goes to the transportation industry, right? They need to make sure that how to optimize their route just in case the main protocol roads, right? Main roads from, you know, getting from one city to another, you know, cannot be, cannot be gone through, right? So all these aspects, it used to be perceived as um, costly, but nowadays the prevention or at least different strategies to tackle, when all these things happen, right, will definitely help the firms to actually reduce unnecessary costs due to this natural phenomenon, right? Same goes with earthquake, right? If let's say in the case of data center, right, we have prominent data center companies nowadays. They are locally in Indonesia, right? Obviously, they need to have backups, right? Where should they put their backup servers, right? Same goes with financial companies like banks, right? They cannot only rely on just one source of server. They need to place, a lot of mitigations to ensure that if something happened to one server, it will not affect the financial transactions of that bank, right? So, and we already faced this so many times, right? A lot of government-owned banks, in the past, right? A few years ago, when there is an attack, for example, cybersecurity attack is actually part of the sustainability practices, right? How to mitigate cyber attack, right? Um, so all these things are no longer being perceived, at least outside Indonesia, as costly. Now, but because it's not mandatory, which is basically the regime as well in the US, right? In the US, Security Actions Commission actually only this year provide the listed firms to at least guidelines on how to produce sustainability reporting. All these years is just voluntarily, right? Some good firms, like what I show you in the graph, right? Some already somewhat did sustainability practices even before sustainability is famous, even before the word sustainability is famous, and they have actually enjoyed the benefit, right? So I think the main challenges now is, yes, I'm not saying that not a lot of firms in Indonesia already start doing sustainability practices properly, and even going to the extent of integrated reporting as well as sustainability reporting. But because it's not mandatory, it's very difficult to convince everyone. And listed firms is just the first door, right? Because in Malaysia now, we know that the carbon emission is calculated by scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. The scope 3 part is actually affected the suppliers as well. So meaning to say, if you want to be a supplier of a listed firm, you have to also comply with the sustainability standards, even though the companies are not listed in the stock market. So mandatory regulations, in my view, is more suitable in Indonesia to be implemented rather than something voluntarily basis like what the United States is doing. So I think it has to be driven by the government to make it mandatory. And once it becomes mandatory, I believe it will take another 10 years before everyone, is doing it properly, right? So if we haven't started, right, then it will be more delayed, longer. And we have a target by 2060 that we have to be net zero. So I think that's my view on this question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Nampuna. That was Dr. Nampuna's response. For Mr. Muhammad Rifandi, is there anything that you would like to add more, Mr. Rifandi? Well, if not, we will move on to the next questions. There are two more questions, but I think I will only choose one. Is it okay, Dr. Nampuna? Because
Yeah,
of
sure,
the
sure.
time. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So, one more questions for you. While some countries have made significant strides in meeting specific SDGs metrics, there is still much to learn about achieving these goals comprehensively. The path towards sustainability is a journey that requires collaborations and commitment. The questions: what metrics or indicators do you believe are most critical for measuring progress on the SDGs? And how can companies contribute to achieving these targets?
Okay, so with regards to the question, I think out of the 17 SDG goals, right, it is very difficult to put, which target we should go first, right? Because even when I had the chance to actually met Professor Jeffrey Sachs himself, because he's actually affiliated to Sunway as well. Professor Jeffrey Sachs of Columbia University is actually the one who actually created the 17 SDG goals. So, in a few occasions where I was lucky enough to listen to him directly in a class setting, he kept mentioning to us that one of the easiest approach is basically to start, right? If we want to have a zero hunger, right, then we need to start to at least reduce hunger, right? If we don't want to have stunting, right, then we need to have less stunting every year, right? So that's the mindset that we need to have, right? If we need more partnership, right? If we need to have a good solid partnerships with a lot of stakeholders, then we have to start somewhere, right? So from the SDG perspective, that's what we need to do. And it's also the same with the ESG. If you look closely, like for example, I can say I have seen, like for example, one of the government-owned banks financial report recently, right? I'm not going to give names, right? But essentially, you just choose one, the largest one. So that's the clue, right? The largest one. Do you know how long is the financial report, the annual report of that bank? It's about 1,300 pages, right? So there's another issue here because they are trying their best to put everything on the report. But at the end of the day, how is it going to be useful for investors? How is it going to be useful for the public at large, right? Who's going to read 1,300 pages of report? So that's another issue in a sense that sometimes, right, because it's not regulated, right, you want to put everything in there. Maybe that's not how you should you should create the report, right? So that's another issue that at least in the more advanced economies, right? We are currently discussing we should standardize the way we disclose this information, because otherwise it's not a race of who can provide the longest report, right? But more on like, okay, even if you only give us a summarized report, what can we get from there, and how can we see the progress or the impact of what you have done, either to the environment or to the society, right? Or even to your own company, and more specifically. So I think um, we better need to start somewhere. Which one that is the easiest or easier to do? I think companies should start doing that, right? And I encourage all the researchers in accounting, especially in Indonesia, to actually look closely in this, right? Um, and I also, to answer the other question in the comment section, I recently published 2 papers related to ESG in Malaysia together with my co-authors. If you have access to those papers, I already provided the link, right? Have a read in those 2 papers. It might not be as fancy as the AOS papers that I explained, but then like at least to give researchers in Indonesia the perspective that um, this is something that we can actually look at, right? And we can apply it straight away to the research in the context of accounting research in Indonesia. So like same principle as how we should encourage firms to start doing sustainability or ESG. Same goes to accounting researcher as well. You need to start somewhere, even though it's simple, but at least we need more researchers' opinion on how we can shape the regulations later on in the future. I think that's my answer. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Dr. Rampuna, for the explanations. And then I will give one more opportunity for anyone who wants to interact directly with Dr. Rampuna. Is there anyone here? Okay, if there is no questions, and I would like to express my gratitude for your participation in today's webinar once again, Dr. Napuna, and thank you for the link to the paper also that you was provided before in the chat box. And we will take a
Thanks,
group
Daniel.
photo shortly, so please stay in the Zoom meeting for a little while longer. Is that okay, Dr. Napuna?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much to
Yes.
ICMA, and thank you very much everyone, all the organizers. It's always my pleasure to join the conference. Thank you, Ayu.
And then next for Dr. Usman, our second speaker today, we also have plenty of questions in the chat box, but from anonymous sender because sent to me directly in the direct message, so I don't know who is it. And to Dr. Usman, the Gambia has shown a growing interest in responsible investing and ESG criteria, particularly as it seeks to enhance its economic development while addressing social and environmental challenges. For example, initiatives focusing on sustainable agriculture and renewable energy have emerged to foster local business and attract foreign investment. And the questions: how can the Gambia leverage its unique resources and local knowledge to promote ESG and responsible investing? And what role can accounting research play in supporting these initiatives by providing frameworks for measuring and reporting on ESG impacts? So let us invite Mr. Usman to answer these questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Madam Moderator. Yeah, well, we have shown interest. Like I said earlier, we have this new legislation which is quite new, quite laudable for them to come with those initiatives. But then insensitivity of companies' behavior. So, like I said in my presentation, we have accepting change. We have that problem already. Companies accepting to change. I think there is a belief, a notion that ESG is expensive. ESG is more of waste of time. It's just for the environmentalist. So a company that is not engaged in environment or whatever should not be engaged in ESG. So, like I said, ESG is still a new topic, so it will take time for companies to come realize it. It will take some quiet amount of time. So, in the form of accounting standards, like I also said in my presentation that our accounting standards are localized. They are more of the RFI accounting standards, and then the ESGs. All these things are already embedded. So that's why we have these legislators, which are also tapped to. Just yesterday, I attended a launch, a environmental democracy launch, which ESG also was discussed there. So we have the executive from the central bank who were there, from the Ministry of Finance. So ESG was more so of a topic. So we need government, we need parliamentarians to come in place and then enact these legislators, but then based on international standards, based on RFRRS. RFRRS is already there. So it's up to us to take it and then harmonize it into our own accounting standards. But still, there is a reluctant to change, you know, across all levels, for companies to adopt new ways, to adopt new sustainable ways of doing businesses, renewable energies. Yeah, yeah. So there are a lot of misconceptions about. So I think one of the key thing is the sensitization. One of the key role that we can play, apart from enacting these regulations, is then coming up with sensitization sessions, sensitization workshops to educate them on ESG, on the impact, on the benefit, the pros and cons of ESG before, just to try to build their confident level, in ESG level. I think from there, that should be our benchmark. And then from there, we'll move ahead. Yeah, yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Usman, for the explanation. And then one more question, Mr. Usman. The speaker highlight the urgent need for global change, emphasizing the role of business in making the world a better place. This transformation involves not just adopting sustainable practices, but also retaking corporate values and responsibilities. For instance, companies that prioritize social equity and environmental stewardship can lead efforts to combat climate change and promote sustainable development. The question: in what ways can business, particularly in developing countries, be incentivized to adopt ESG principles that contribute to global sustainability goals? And how can accounting practices be tailored to measure the impact of such initiatives on community development? I have sent the question to you also, Mr. Usman.
Yes. Like I said earlier, is building confidence. Building confidence in the businesses, showing them that ESG is not here as an expensive mechanism for businesses to do, but a easier and a cheaper way to even do businesses. But then looking at it, just building that confidence that this is more of a social corporate responsibility at some point. That this is something that, like for example, a lot of businesses are already doing ESGs without knowing. Right? They have a lot of ESGs going on, but they don't know this is even actual ESG. But if you look at the word societal, environment, governance, you take it as so broad, but in reality, they are doing ESG in their day-to-day work. So it's more of about building building confidence, support from from the government, yeah, from international partners, and then sensitizing them on ESG, ESG incentives. Yeah. Okay. Makasih.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Usman, for the explanation. And I would like to give an opportunity for anyone who wants to interact directly with Dr. Usman. If there anyone here, you can use the raise hand feature first, and I may call you by your name. Okay, well, if there are no questions anymore, I would like to express my gratitude for your participation in today's webinar. Once again, Dr. Usman, and many thanks that you are able to come here again and participate in our international webinar today. And then now let's go on to the documentation and photo session. So please, all participants, on your camera and we will take a picture together. Please, MC or operator, help me to take the picture. Miss Mega or Miss Fatia, maybe.
Okay, first of all, I want to say thank you to Mrs. Ayu Puspitasari SAK MAK, Dr. Nampuna Dolokultom, and Dr. Osman Jelo for such an insightful presentation and discussion session. We will now proceed with a photo session and a symbolic appreciation ceremony for our esteemed speaker. Please to Zoom operator to guide the photo session.
Yeah, wait.
Okay, we have 14 pages. Maybe you can count from page number 1, Miss Mega.
Okay, I will count 3, 2, 1. Okay, go on to the second slide. 3, 2, 1. Okay, next. 3, 2, 1. And the slide number 4, we have 13. Okay. Slide number 5. Slide number 6. Slide number 7. Slide number 8. Slide number 9. Number 10. 11. 12. And the last slide, 13. Okay, thank you.
Okay, next maybe the symbolic appreciation, Miss Fatia.
Okay, for the symbolic session, please the operator to share screen the certificate. Okay, first there will be a symbolic handover certificate to Dr. Nampuna Dolokultom for successfully contribute to the second international conference of accounting and business digital transformation and development of concept of sustainability accounting in the latest research model as a keynote speaker on October 5, 2024. Thank you, Dr. Nabuna Dulugultom.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Fatia, and thank you, the chairman of each one.
Okay. Next, the symbolic handover of certificate to Dr. Usman Jelu, BSc ACC MA. Okay, thank you, Dr. Usman, for successfully contribute the second International Conference of Accounting and Business, Digital Transformation and Development of the Concept of Sustainability Accounting in the latest research model as a keynote speaker on October 5, 2024. Thank you, Dr. Usman.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for the invitation. Terima kasih banyak ya.
Thank you. Okay. Yes. And finally, the symbolic of hangover a certificate to our great moderator, Mrs. Ayu Puspitasari, SAK MAK, for successfully contribute to the second International Conference of Accounting and Business, Digital Transformation and Development of the Concept of Sustainability. Thank
Yes,
you,
thank
Ms.
you, Ms.
Ayu.
Fatia. Thank you all. Thank you, Dr. Nakuna, and thank you, Mr. Usman, Dr. Usman, for your participation today. And I apologize for any shortcomings during moderating today's session. And now I will return the floor to the MC, Ms. Fatia.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Ayu. Okay, let's give another round of applause to our speaker and moderator for their incredible contribution today. Next, before we proceed to the parallel session, here's is the attendance link for webinar participant in the Zoom chat. And please make the payment for certificate, each worth 3,000 rupiah. Okay, okay, up next, we will have parallel session. Let's proceed the rooms according to your area of interest. The session will run from 10 p.m. until 12:30. So enjoy your discussion. We hand over the parallel session to the commit. Please to call paper commit to get the parallel session.